Hello and welcome back to my channel What If Deku 2.0.
Join us as we delve into the realms of fanfiction and fantasy, bringing you the best stories and discussions. Today, we're kicking off part 2 of our series, What If Deku Had Ability to Steal Quirks? If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is Nightwolfgamer03 from fanfiction.net. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now, let's dive into the fanfic. Izuku couldn't believe his situation right now. It was his third day at UA, and he was overstimulated. And it's not like any of his classmates, besides Katsuki, knew about his autism, because he was worried that he'd get bullied. Much like how he was in his junior high years. The only reason he hasn't committed suicide was because of Katsuki protecting him and assuring him that he wasn't weird or unnatural, or even dare one call him retard, and despite how hard Izuku tried not to let those words affect him, the only thing that caused him to feel that they weren't true was the validation he received from Katsuki. He was grateful to have someone willing to stand up to those bullies for him, even if it was someone mildly aggressive like Katsuki. But back to the point. Izuku was overstimulated. He didn't sleep much last night because of some slight listening in on a phone call his mother was having with Hound Dog after his appointment with him, since Izuku's apartment walls were pretty thin, so it was purely a mistake that he was listening in. Along with that, he also tried to figure out why his classmate, Hitoshi, had multiple quirks. The best conclusion he could come up with was that, in his words, his second quirk is a byproduct of his first quirk. And he was very sleep-deprived when he had finished his analysis. So crappy thing #1 ticked on the list of crappy things that happened to Izuku that day. Then there was school. Katsuki and Izuku had got there slightly later than they did the previous day, because Izuku ended up accidentally sleeping in that day. So there were slightly more people in the classroom before homeroom started. Hitoshi was in the classroom by the time they got there, so at least Izuku could interview him about his 2 quirks. But he ended up not being able to do it at that time because he was busy thoroughly apologizing to Katsuki because of the green beans oversleeping. Though Katsuki accepted Izuku's apology every time because he knew it was an accident and that Izuku didn't mean to do it. But that didn't mean Izuku ended up interviewing Hitoshi in private. So crappy thing #2 ticked on the list of crappy things that happened to Izuku that day. But the crap doesn't end there. After homeroom, which was actually relatively peaceful, was English, with present Mike. Now don't get Izuku wrong, he adored present Mike like Aizawa adored sleeping. But Izuku didn't enjoy how loud he would get, even if it was part of his quirk. So built-up anxiety from his first subject of the day meant crappy thing #3 ticked on the list of crappy things that happened to Izuku that day. Then after a crappy period of loud English was an even crappier period of math with ectoplasm. Though the teacher wasn't the one causing all of the noise, just about everyone in that class was talking, though it was almost always on topic, so ectoplasm didn't mind. Izuku, on the other hand, he'd rather be thrown into a volcano that's about to erupt than be in a noisy class like that. And what was worse was that Izuku couldn't focus because of the noise, so he didn't quite finish the work that was assigned to him. So he had to finish that alongside the homework that was assigned to him. And you know what that means. Crappy thing #4 ticked on the list of crappy things that happened to Izuku that day. Then there was third period, hero training with All Might. Izuku didn't know what it was, but something seemed off about All Might that day. He was treating most of the students, including Izuku for that matter, like they didn't even know the most basic information. But apart from that, the class was learning about hand-to-hand combat that lesson, and what to do if they were ever outnumbered in battle. And Izuku went. How you'd expect a semi-overstimulated person would go. He did, kind of good, though all of the touching bothered him quite a bit. And All Might didn't even take note on how uncomfortable Izuku looked. So crappy thing #5 ticked on the list of crappy things that happened to Izuku that day. Then it was lunchtime. Izuku sat with his new group of friends, which they had all decided to call their group the Ochaka Squad. Izuku tried to pay attention to the conversation that was going on, but the entire cafeteria was so loud. Izuku had a massive build-up of anxiety that day and knew that there would be more to come. The conversation then shifted to Izuku's lack of input in the conversation. When asked about it, Izuku partially lied, keeping every autistic trait about himself a secret, and replied with, "I'm fine. Just a build-up of anxiety over high school. I'll be fine." But Katsuki suspected that there was more than meets the eye. Izuku tried to hide his fidgeting, so he didn't stand out. Lunch wasn't crappy, but it couldn't have been any better than it already did. Then there was the last period of the day, and the final nail in the coffin for Izuku's overstimulation and anxiety. Hero Ethics was the final class Izuku had that day, and it was with the ever-so-quiet Erasure Hero, Eraserhead, Aka, Aizawa, yay, though just because the teacher was quiet, that didn't mean the students in the class were. Ochako, Mina, Toru, and Sue were loudly working up at the front. Tenya was scolding Ijiro for what Izuku assumed was something to do about doing his work or something. Hitoshi was usually quiet by himself, but Denki was with him, and the two were laughing loudly at what the electrification quirk user had said as a joke. Then Izuku started to chew on his fingers, a habit that Izuku got rid of a long time ago, that was starting to come back. Though, not before long, Aizawa had noticed the state Izuku was in, and instructed him to go out of the classroom. And before long, both Aizawa and Izuku were both dealing with what was going to come. And Aizawa knew that Izuku was very overstimulated, and he wanted to do everything he could to help Izuku through the situation. "Before I do anything else, I have one thing to ask. Can I touch you?" Aizawa asked, keeping his voice low and steady. Izuku nodded as the two sat down on the ground. Aizawa then took Izuku's hand and placed it on his chest. "All right, I'd like you to copy my breathing, okay?" Aizawa instructed. Minutes passed by in silence, except for the noise that was coming from the classroom, though it wasn't too much of a problem, since the noise died down after Aizawa and Izuku went out of the room. The breathing exercise helped Izuku focus on something else that wasn't any ambient noises or the nasty day that he was having. "Everything will be fine," Aizawa whispered multiple times as Izuku started to rock. Izuku's breathing was pretty steady by this point, and he wasn't crying or screaming, so Aizawa presumed that this was a stim Izuku did when he was content, or at least calm. Then Aizawa was going to try and do something that his former teachers did with him whenever he was really overstimulated. Although he wasn't sure whether or not Izuku wanted to do it, so he decided to ask him first. "Hey, is it all right if we do another exercise, which my former teachers did whenever I was really overstimulated?" Aizawa asked Izuku. "Yes, sensei," Izuku replied, his voice shaky. "Okay, I'm going to ask you some yes or no questions. You can answer them by talking. You can do that. But if you want to nod your head or shake it, you can do that too. And if you know sign language, then you can do that as well. Whatever feels comfortable for you. Also, there are no wrong answers." Aizawa instructed, Izuku nodding. "Okay. First question, do you enjoy eating fruit?" Izuku nodded his head. "Do you like apples?" Once again, Izuku nodded. "Do you enjoy eating vegetables?" Izuku nodded. "Do you like broccoli?" Izuku nodded. "Are you getting along with other people here?" Izuku nodded. This was what he needed. Some peace and quiet. Sure, he was having a very crappy day, but Aizawa was making the heavy atmosphere around him a little bit lighter. After a few more questions, Aizawa asked one last question. "Is there anything else I can do to help you?" Aizawa asked. Izuku shook his head. Aizawa smiled, glad that he could help. He then stood and put his hands onto Izuku's shoulders. "I know today has been difficult for you. Don't let this be a bad day. It will pass with time. You still have friends who love you." Izuku nodded. "Now I don't expect you to do the rest of your work this lesson, so feel free to stay out here for as long as you like." Izuku just nodded and smiled. Once the day ended, Katsuki had brought him home and stayed over for dinner, though he only stayed over to do Izuku's extra homework for him and helped Izuku with the actual homework. Izuku then fell asleep without incident. It was the day after the events of the previous chapter, and Izuku was feeling much better. After having his regular subjects, it was time for hero training. Though things were a bit different, Aizawa and Cementos were there as well. Alright, students, today we'll be getting a tight grasp on how you use your quirks and new ways to apply and enhance them, All Might explained. Instead of one, in their hero costumes, they were all in their gym uniforms. We've managed to secure Gym Gamma for first years like you today, Aizawa said. Gym Gamma, also known as the Training Kitchen Lab or TKL for short, is a training facility for quirk development that I designed myself. Cementos informed the students as he placed his hands on the concrete floor. The terrain of the massive gymnasium quickly shifted as large platforms and cliffs formed from the ground. With my quirk, I can mold the area to help with any form of training our students need. That's right. One by one you'll go up, demonstrate your quirk and Eraserhead, Cementos, and I will give you feedback, All Might explained. Aoyama, you're the first student of 1A, so you'll be going up first. Aizawa instructed, Aoyama going in. This would be a fantastic time to use my evaluate quirk on everyone, Izuku thought to himself, looking over at Katsuki. Meanwhile, in Gym Gamma, Yuga had showed off his quirk, Naval Laser, and had explained its limits, including how he couldn't use it for more than a second because of the pain that comes with it. Hearing this, Aizawa was the first to critique him. It seems like you'll have to try to go beyond your limits, Aoyama. Perhaps the best way to do that is firing out your laser constantly, Aizawa critiqued. Then Cementos was next to give Yuga some tips. I agree with what Eraserhead has said, as emitter-type quirks only get stronger when pushed beyond their limits, Cementos said. Then it was All Might's turn next. You will be much more powerful if you take that belt of yours off. The only way you'll become stronger is when you use your own strength, All Might told Yuga. But sir, if I don't wear it, then my sparkles will leak out constantly, Yuga informed, All Might shaking his head. Then you must learn to control it, young Aoyama, All Might exclaimed. Aizawa shook his head in disbelief. Not only was the #1 hero ableist towards neurodivergent students, but also towards students who need to use support items to properly control their quirks. Aoyama, you may leave when ready, Aizawa instructed. Also, tell Ishido that she's up next. But not before you, All Might shouted out, before being cut off by Aizawa. Actually, you may leave now, Aizawa said, Aoyama walking out. Nothing was happening during the meeting. The students were just making small talk with each other, and Izuku used his evaluate quirk on Katsuki, who was talking with Hijiro. After the two finished their conversation, Izuku walked up to Katsuki. Kaken, Izuku called out. Hey, quirkologist, are you ready for your quirk assessment? Katsuki asked Izuku, grinning. Yeah, and if you don't mind, I used my evaluate quirk on you. I hope you don't mind, Izuku sheepishly replied. And I'd like to share some of my findings with you. Sure, go ahead, Katsuki nodded. All right, I'll tell you the basics of your quirk, right down to the complexities, Izuku smiled, doing a motion that was similar to rocking. Katsuki then smiled again, knowing how happy it made Izuku whenever he used his evaluate quirk on others, even himself sometimes, and he also knew most of Izuku's stimming habits, including his rocking. So what I know is that your quirk allows you to create explosions out of your hands, and this is because of the sweat glands on your palms, but are different than your other sweat glands, which are built normally. The sweat glands on your palms sweat out nitroglycerin like sweat, and are much more sweatier than the normal kind of sweat gland, though the fuel for your quirk is your sweat. In situations where it's colder, your sweat takes longer to detonate, as opposed to warmer weather, where the conditions are optimal for your quirk to ignite. Izuku infatuated. So as a suggestion, perhaps training your palms to sweat more could help you with this weakness. If not, you could wear warmer clothes so you can sweat more, though it does seem that overusing your explosive explosions will result in your arms and shoulders giving out. So with most emitter-type quirks, constant usage will eventually make your quirk stronger. Katsuki nodded. I see. Thanks for the advice, quirkologist. Izuku smiled, especially since Katsuki was one of the few people he knew he could comfortably infatuate to and would listen to him. Just then, Ijiro walked up, listening to Izuku and Katsuki's conversation. So, Midoriya, you can analyze other people's quirks, I hear? Ijiro asked Izuku, who nodded. Well then, can you analyze my quirk? Of course, Kirishima, Izuku answered. Can you tell me more about your quirk? Of course. My quirk, hardening, allows me to harden my skin. It's not very flashy, though. Ijiro explained. Your quirk is amazing, Kirishima. You shouldn't doubt it. Izuku complimented Ijiro. Transformation types are interesting. They advance and develop as a sort of in-between of emitter types and mutant types. Your hardening seems to take on a rocky kind of structure. Yeah, that's true. Ijiro proceeded to look at the ground with doubt. Most transformation types start out fairly small scale. Izuku shrugged with a smile. But I can already tell you're nowhere near your full capabilities. You can push so much farther. In fact, let's try something. Like what? Ijiro questioned. Yeah, I think you're much closer to advancing your quirk than you think. Izuku grinned at the redhead. You're holding yourself back by doubting your power, Kirishima. Activate your quirk. Okay, Ijiro blinked as he hardened his right arm, it taking on a sharp, rocky texture. What now? Do it again, Izuku demanded, smiling as confidently as the sun when it rose in the morning. What? Ijiro implored, perplexed with Izuku's orders. Force your quirk to activate again. Izuku encouraged the hardening quirk user in an encouraging way. But my quirk is already active? Ijiro was unsure about Izuku's orders. Is it now? Izuku questioned Ijiro, who just stood there, bewildered. Are you really using all of it? I think so. Ijiro looked rather unsure, not knowing what forcing his quirk to activate while active. Then prove it and force it again, Izuku exclaimed, overexcited with the outcome of his demand. If you say so, Midoriya. Ijiro just shrugged, unable to argue with Izuku. As Ijiro tried to activate his quirk while maintaining it, he felt a strong resistance when he did, like his arm was fully flexed and he was trying to move it. He couldn't move it past the resistance. This was his limit. More, stronger, denser, more, Izuku screamed out, encouraging Ijiro some more. The green bean was so caught up in trying to help his classmate. He was so caught up that he didn't notice the rest of the class except for Mina and Sue watching them. Ijiro then hardened his entire body, forcing his quirk past the resistance that was pushing him. He felt like something cracked and then the resistance was gone. He felt heavy but strangely stronger. Congratulations, Kirishima, Izuku smiled brightly. Your hardening quirk just evolved beyond its limits, plus ultra style. This is very strong to maintain. Ijiro mentioned, and just like that his quirk deactivated. You just developed it and made it stronger, Izuku grinned happily. It'll take a while until you can use it just as easily as you use the current level. You just need more training. Thanks, Midoriya. I can't believe I was able to go so much further. Ijiro smiled. You just needed to stop doubting yourself and your quirk, Kirishima. Izuku waved off the thanks. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Ijiro looked at Izuku's face when he heard that. He saw the same look in the one with all users' eyes that he'd seen in his own in the mirror, back when he almost lost his drive to be a hero. I feel that, bro. Ijiro nodded. Yeah, Izuku gave a lopsided smile. But we have to move beyond the past if we want to be heroes, right? Heck yeah, Kirishima fist bumped Izuku. A few moments later, Tsu walked up to Izuku. I've heard that you can analyze other people's quirks. Do you think you can analyze mine? Tsu asked the green bean, who was connected to the radio waves, using his radio signal quirk. Of course, Tsu. Of course, Tsu, Izuku nodded. After a few moments passed, Izuku told Tsu his findings. How amazing. Tsu, your quirk, frog, is extremely versatile. May I ask you a few questions about it? Of course, Kiro. What exact frog are you? This question confused Tsu quite a bit. Midoriya, I don't think you get it. My quirk is called frog. I can do anything a frog can do, Kiro. Tsu simply replied. I'm aware, but which frog in particular? Izuku asked. Tsu just responded with confusion. I guess I've never thought about it before. Well, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of frog species out there in the world. Izuku pointed out. What are your froggy capabilities as of now? Frog-like anatomy, great leg strength, wall clinging, a powerful extending tongue, fast swimming, and secreting mucus with different effects like paralysis and hiding scent. Tsu explained. Have you ever tried training to be like other frogs? Izuku wondered. What do you mean, Midoriya-kun? Tsu asked. Your quirk isn't limited to just one type of frog. If you train your body to use the abilities of other frog species, you could possibly be any frog ever in the entire world, Izuku exclaimed, Tsu amazed with Izuku's findings. I'll try that, thanks Midoriya. Tsu thanked her friend. After a few more minutes, Katsuki walked up to Izuku, grinning to himself. So I hear that you've analyzed someone else, eh? Katsuki inquired. Yeah, Tsu came over, so I analyzed her quirk, Izuku explained. Nice. Katsuki grinned. Who are you gonna analyze next? I'm not entirely sure yet, Izuku truthfully replied. In his mind, Katsuki was grinning even more, but tried not to show it too much on his face. Well, anyways, I'm going to go talk with Kirishima. If you need me, I'll be there with him, Katsuki told Izuku, walking off. Izuku then reactivated radio signal and continued to vibe. Meanwhile, in Gym Gamma, All Might continued to indirectly harass everyone with his ableism becoming more clear with each word that came out of his mouth, and he didn't even realize the harm he was doing. But back with Izuku. After listening to a news broadcast about a robbery that had happened the previous night, Mina had walked up to him. Yo, Midoriya, Tsu told me that you can analyze other people's quirks. Do you think you can analyze mine? Mina happily asked the green bean. Sure, Ishido. Izuku accepted Mina's request, though hesitant, because the news story was getting interesting. Can you give me a basic description of your quirk, so I can understand it better? Sure, my quirk is called acid. It allows me to produce a corrosive liquid from my body, Mina explained. Izuku thought for a bit. Are you able to control the viscosity of it? What about the solubility? Or the corrosivity? Are you able to produce different types of acids? Izuku bombarded Mina with questions. I don't know, Mina replied, a little bit of anxiety showing in her face. Then perhaps you should study up on some chemistry. If you can freely control which acids you produce, you could become irreplaceable in dozens of situations. As for direct applications, I'd recommend focusing your control on both solubility and viscosity. The more control you have over your acid, the less likely you are to harm someone by accident. Izuku gave some advice to Mina, hoping to help her out. Yeah, controlling the properties of my acid would definitely help me a lot. I hurt myself a few times growing up by creating stuff that was too strong for me to handle, Mina admitted with a sheepish grin. Well, I hope my advice can help you become better at using your quirk, Izuku hoped. Anyways, thank you, Midoriya, Mina thanked, walking off. Izuku nodding, soon continuing to listen to the radio signals. The news broadcast was still talking about the robbery, so Izuku listened in on it some more, this time taking notes on it with his notebook. which he had brought to class in case he'd figure out why Hitoshi had 2 quirks. Izuku had noted most of the important details of it, including the fact that Rabbit Hero, Mirko, managed to deal with this event. After that, Izuku then took notes about his classmates' quirks, and was deep in thought, until— "Hey, Midoriya!" Denki screamed out, startling the broccoli boy. "What do you want?" Izuku huffed, not realizing that it was Denki. "Don't you know it's extremely mean to sneak up on someone with PTS?" Izuku then looked up, realizing that it was Denki who startled him. Izuku then started blushing a bright red. His cheeks were so red that they could bring any fully grown tomato to shame. Denki soon started blushing as well, having an apologetic expression on his face. "Sorry, Midoriya. I just heard from a certain explosive blonde that you can analyze other people's quirks." Denki apologized, as Izuku was embarrassed that he accidentally revealed one of his deepest, darkest secrets to someone he had hardly knew at the time. "I apologize if I scared you, or triggered anything unpleasant." Please don't tell anyone else about that," Izuku demanded, still a blushing mess as Denki then nodded in agreement. "So anyways, about your quirk analysis. Tell me more about your quirk, so I can get a better understanding of it." "Oh yeah, my quirk is called electrification. It allows me to produce large voltages of electricity, and I can let that stored electricity release into my surroundings, though currently have no way to direct said electricity as of now," Denki explained. "And if I use too much electricity, I turn into a complete dum-dum." "I see. Your quirk is of a very rare typing. It would be a shame if it went to waste," Izuku muttered, slightly dissociating. "Midoriya, you okay? You seem to be blanking out," Denki asked the victim of trauma. Soon, Izuku then snapped right back into reality. Oh yeah, I'll be fine. Hopefully," Izuku reassured Denki. "So your quirk. Have you ever thought about using support items to help you direct your electricity to specific targets?" "I have sort of thought of that. I've never really had a specific thought about it," Denki admitted. "And about the part with you becoming a total idiot. Have you ever tried to control your electricity, instead of focusing on how much of it you produce?" Izuku soon asked the electrical teen. "Now that I think about it, I haven't. Thanks, Midoriya. This'll make quirk usage much easier," Denki thanked the broccoli boy. "And don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your— you know what?" Izuku smiled at this, since he wasn't intending on any of his classmates learning about Izuku's trauma, so it was good to know that the leak was plugged before it broke. Denki then walked off, leaving Midoriya back with his notebook. Once he had finished his notes on everyone, he tried to figure out more theories to why Hitoshi had 2 quirks. Several theories included: he was born with a condition that left him with 2 quirks. He had a quirk awakening, giving him his extra quirk. Somehow someone transferred his second quirk into him. Or he is the result of a perfect quirk combination. Then Izuku blanked out again. There was nothing. Nothing. After a few minutes, Izuku heard a voice. "Hey, quirkologist!" Katsuki screamed, snapping Izuku back into reality. "Kaiken," Izuku blurted out. "Were you dissociating again?" Katsuki asked Izuku. "Maybe." Izuku lowered his head in shame. "Wherever you were in your mind, you're not there anymore. You're here with me in ground beta." Katsuki comforted. "Yeah, I know." Izuku nodded. "Did you need me for something, Kaiken?" "Human Minecraft heard about your analyzing skills, and she wanted you to analyze her quirk, but you were dissociating, so she came to me," Katsuki explained. "I'll bring her over." Izuku smiled, happy to analyze another person's quirk. Soon enough, Momo had walked up to Izuku. "So, what can you tell me about my quirk?" Momo asked, smiling. "Before that, what can you tell me about your quirk?" the green bean inquired. "My quirk is called creation. It allows me to create stuff as long as I know its atomic structure and if I have enough body fat," Momo explained. I see. Izuku nodded. I must ask you something. What kind of style were you going for with your hero costume? I also need space on my body for me to be able to create the stuff I want to create. Momo explained. I see. Did you think of the possible sex appeal that would come with your costume? Izuku asked, taking notes. No, not really. I just told the costume manufacturing company that I need skin exposure. I didn't even think of the possible appeal that could come with. Momo answered. If you'd like, I'd gladly make you some adjustments to your costume. I'm really good at sketching. Izuku offered, smiling. Sure, Midoriya. How long do you think you'll be with it? Momo inquired. I'll need a picture of your hero costume for reference, so once you get me that, I'll be able to start. Izuku replied. And I have a question about your quirk. When you've finished using the item you've created, what happens to it? Usually I just wait until it gets destroyed. Momo raised an eyebrow. And what if the item you create is basically indestructible? Izuku asked. Well, I guess it just exists. Momo shrugged. Have you ever tried absorbing what you create back into your body? Izuku asked. No, I haven't. I'll definitely have to try that next time I use my quirk. Thanks, Midoriya. Momo thanked Izuku, walking off. No problem, the green-haired Wonder Ball exclaimed. After Izuku's meeting with Momo, Izuku went back to his notes, thinking about which of his theories about Hitoshi's quirks was most likely to be correct. He knew that his third theory was very wild, though it wasn't totally out of the window either, since it'd definitely explain why his second quirk caused harm to him, though it brings up a whole lot of other questions, such as, who gave him his second quirk? Why was he chosen? Does his second quirk run through his family? Or why would he lie about only having one quirk? Then the next wildest theory was his second theory, since quirk awakenings aren't always uncommon for people with villain quirks. Izuku would definitely know. One with all is definitely seen as being villainous, though mind control doesn't really have anything to do with power build-up. And Izuku didn't really want to be too nosy, in case if Hitoshi did have a quirk awakening, it wasn't any of the quirkologists' business how it happened. Then there was Izuku's fourth theory. Izuku wasn't sure what to think of a perfect combination, though it wasn't out of the window, since there could be a chance that brainwashing and one for all could just be two quirks mushed together. But then Izuku realized how dumb his point could have been. But then there was Izuku's first theory. It seemed like it was pretty much possible since Izuku knew that there were people out there who could hold multiple quirks within them, so he kept that one mostly in mind. A few minutes later, Ochako had walked up to Izuku. So I hear that you can analyze quirks. Ochako guessed. Yeah, would you like me to analyze your quirk? Izuku inquired, seeing where this interaction was going. Yeah, I'd like that. Midoriya, Ochako nodded. My quirk is called Zero Gravity. It allows me to remove the effects of gravity on my targets through touch, though overuse can cause nausea. On that note, you might want to think about having your costume altered a bit to put a bit of pressure on your wrists and neck. There are pressure points there that help with nausea. The biggest cause of your nausea probably has to do with the semicircular canals in your ears. They help regulate balance, and when they're disturbed by a sudden loss of gravity, as an example, they'll give you a case of vertigo. You might be able to train that weakness away, but some support gear could also help. Medicines such as motion sickness pills could also work, I think. I believe you should also look into a sort of grappling hook that you could use to help with mobility. Izuku told the Machai girl. Thanks for the advice, Midoriya. The Machai girl thanked as Tenya soon ran up to Izuku. Before Tenya said anything, Izuku knew exactly what he wanted from him. Let me guess, quirk analysis? Izuku presumed. How did you know? Tenya asked Izuku, raising an eyebrow. Lucky guess, I guess. Izuku chuckled. Anyways, tell me more about your quirk. My quirk is called Engine. As it's a mutant type, I have car-like engines in each of my calves, giving me incredible running speed and extreme kicking power. Tenya explained. Do you need to fuel them up? Izuku asked. Yes, I need to fuel them by drinking orange juice, Tenya replied. I see, Izuku nodded. Your engines let you rapidly accelerate and maintain high velocity. Your legs seem to have undergone natural strengthening because of this, though I believe you've also conditioned them further yourself. Indeed. Tenya nodded with a grin. I plan to use my legs as my main form of offense in the field. Therefore, it was paramount that I strengthen them as much as possible. To further your quirk usage, I'd suggest consistently upping the time you can spend in top gear. The longer you can maintain max speed and output, the further you'll push your quirk. Mutant-type quirks only advance when physically forced past their limits. You may also want to incorporate the most efficient cooling system you can fit into your costume. I believe overheating will stall you out, and that could leave you as a liability on the field. Izuku explained. Indeed, when I hit maximum output, I can usually only maintain it for a short 10-second burst, Tenya informed the one with all user. As I further develop my quirk, I hope to be able to not only increase speed, but how long I can maintain it as well. That sounds like a great idea. What are you currently working towards achieving? Izuku questioned, curious. My goal for now is to reach full potential and be able to move independently. Once I achieve that, I will focus on the strength requirement, Tenya explained. That makes sense, Izuku nodded. You'll probably also need to figure out a way to get rid of excess weight. A lot of people lose unnecessary P&D when exercising, so maybe a little exercise can help with that. That'd help you reduce the calories needed to keep your engines running. It sounds wise to take action with these recommendations. Thank you very much for them. Tenya thanked, bowing respectfully. This caused Izuku to blush. There's no need to bow, Ida. I'm just helping out a FFF friend. Izuku stuttered. Of course, Tenya laughed. Izuku blushed even more as Tenya just walked off, chuckling to himself. Izuku had gone back to his notes, taking notes about his friend's quirks and other ways if they could enhance them. As Izuku was about to go up and ask Rikido about his quirk, speak of the devil plus ultra. Me and Koji were wondering if you could analyze my quirk, Rikido told Izuku, Koji walking right beside him. Of course, Sato, Izuku nodded. Can you tell me more about your quirk? My quirk is called Sugar Rush. It's a transformation quirk that allows me to get stronger for every 10 grams of sugar I consume. Though too much sugar leaves me extremely fatigued and kind of an idiot. Interesting. What kind of sugar do you normally use to activate your quirk? Izuku asked Rikido. Normally, I just use granulated sugar to activate my quirk. Just the stuff you can buy off the shelf anywhere. Rikido shrugged. Have you ever tried other forms of sugar for activating your quirk, like brown sugar or cane sugar, confectioner's sugar, muscovado sugar, turbinado sugar, pearl sugar, sanding sugar? All of them are either from different sources or have different levels of refinement and processing. And fruits even have some sugars in them. I believe that these differences would most likely impact your quirk in different ways. Plus, the kickback of your quirk could probably be better controlled with training and testing of your limits. Your quirk may have the effect of increasing your strength from regular sugar, but I believe it may have far more applications based on the type of sugar you consume. While basic granulated sugar increases your strength, it may very well be that a different type of sugar increases your speed or could perhaps increase your durability. Also, a few capsules of stevia may help in the short term for regulating your drawback as it helps lower BLD sugar levels. Izuku smiled at the man of sugar. As for the long term, I suggest that natural exercise could increase your base strength by a lot. That's impressive, Midoriya. I actually use brown sugar and confectioner's sugar when I bake and cook. Why I never thought to pop a few grams of them and try to activate my quirk, I'll never know. But I do know what I'm going to be trying soon. Thanks for the analysis, bro, Rikido. No problem, Sato. Izuku smiled as he fist bumped the Sugar Rush user. Koda, would you like me to analyze your quirk as well? Koji shook his head, which Izuku accepted. I see. Izuku simply nodded, knowing a thing or two about consent. Soon, Rikido and Koji walked off, leaving Izuku once more to his thoughts and notebook. As moments passed, Izuku started thinking about how he'd do when it was his turn in Gym Gamma. So, to make himself more at ease, he decided to take notes on his own quirks. He decided to rank them from weakest to most powerful. Ink Blast, Gunpoint, Evaluate, Radio Signal, Attraction of Small Objects, Handcuff, Vine WHP, Weight Loss, Chameleon, Web Shoot, Jelly Surprise, Tentacles, Ignite, Ice Blade, Rock Plates, Hot Wings, Hold Up, Sparks Fly, Regeneration, Brain Curdle, Gummy Body, Heart Bomb, Objectify, Rhyming Reason. After a while, it was finally Izuku's turn, though he overheard something being said to Shoto. Do you want to be expelled? Aizawa questioned Shoto. If you won't give it your all, you don't belong in the hero course. Use your fire and show us what you can do. That or you can leave. I won't use his quirk, Shoto groaned out, his fists clenched at his sides, returning to the others. Soon enough, Izuku had walked into Gym Gamma. Eraserhead, Cementos, and All Might were waiting for him. Midoriya, Aizawa greeted. It's nice to be here. Izuku smiled, trying not to look awkward in front of All Might. As you could see, you're the last one to be here, since you have an arsenal of quirks that can be applied in different ways. Aizawa explained. Understood? Understood, Izuku repeated. Now you have a choice. The order of which your quirks are demonstrated can be in any order you want, whether in the order you got them, alphabetical, weakest to strongest, strongest to weakest, whatever. Aizawa explained. Though firstly, tell us about your original quirk. Izuku smiled genuinely, exited about the fact that he could talk about his own quirk, for once. Of course, my quirk is called One with All. It's an emitter type. It allows me to steal the power of other people's quirks, and it gives me a more powerful version of the original quirk, based upon my own and the target's ages. For example, when my own quirk awakened, I accidentally stole Katsuki's quirk and turned it into 6 times more powerful than it originally was. I was lucky he isn't a mutant quirk user, since I could have been entirely mistaken. Izuku informed. Each of the teachers nodded. Is there anything else? Cementos asked Izuku, making him jump up and down. Absolutely. The way the power level determined, with X meaning my age, and Y meaning the target's age. For emitters, XY equals sign power level. For transformers, X into Y divide by half of X joules to power level. For mutants, Y1 equals sign power level. Izuku continued to inform. And I can also use my stockpiled quirks in combination. However, I can only use up to 5 quirks in a combination at a time. Then Izuku started demonstrating his quirks, showing off the different ways he uses them. When the school day ended, Izuku smiled to himself, happy that he was able to help his friends with their quirks and applying them in different ways, as well as suggestions for support items that they could use, and the fact that he knew he could make his quirks his own, instead of being used by villains. Maybe life isn't so bad after all, Izuku thought to himself. Izuku and Katsuki were walking to school as usual, though they had noticed a crowd of reporters and camera people surrounding the normal route the 2 childhood friends took to get to school. What the? Izuku gasped. The hell is this? Katsuki muttered. Kaken, do we find another route? Izuku asked the fiery blonde. Let's see what the commotion is about first, Katsuki planned. One of the reporters had turned around to see Izuku and Katsuki. You two, what's it like to have All Might as a teacher? The reporter enthusiastically questioned the two.
Well,
Izuku stammered. It's none of your business, that's what it is, Katsuki exclaimed. Come on, quirkologist. And then the two just walked off. The reporter turned to the others and said, We need to find more UA students to interview. When the green bean and the hot chili pepper had gotten to UA, they had noticed the same crowd from before, and neither were happy about it. Hey, move out of the way, Katsuki yelled. There are people being blocked off, so move it, you damn news people. Izuku noticed other students being crowded by the mass of reporters as well. Ochako, Mina, Toru, and Sue were practically back to back. Rikido and Mizo could be seen near the edge, both of the taller teens with mics being shoved in their faces too. He also noticed a few other students being swarmed too, a black-haired boy wearing a headband, and a blonde teen who seemed to be enjoying the attention he was getting. Izuku presumed these must be some of the students from 1B. What do you think you're doing? A loud, growling voice barked out at the group of reporters. Several of the students let out sighs of relief as Hound Dog showed up. You're interfering with our students' ability to get to school. Cease this harassment of our students and leave the premises or the police will be called. We just want to know about All Might, a reporter yelled back. All Might isn't available for interviews today, so leave, Aizawa stated while walking up to the gate with present mic. Why should we listen to such a shabby-looking man? A different reporter demanded. Aizawa just exhaled heavily. This is why he hated the media. You know, they're causing such a ruckus, they're almost like villains. Present mic whispered to Aizawa. Can't we just beat them up? Not unless you want your reputation dragged through the mud. Aizawa shook his head. Let's just wait for the police. While Aizawa and present mic kept the reporter's attention, Hound Dog ushered the students past the gate so they could get to class. Izuku calmed down from the surprise of a reporter ambush as he and Katsuki walked to class. One reporter had gotten too impatient and tried to cross the gate after the last of the students had entered. She was met with UAS security system, also known as the UA barrier, as the massive steel gate slammed into place, with over a meter of reinforced steel between them and any form of All Might interview. The multitudes of reporters had no choice but to complain and wait. This is why I don't like crowds, Izuku muttered. Soon enough, both of them had gotten to class, to find that there were discussions about the event that happened that morning. The one day I decide to come earlier, I'm just about ambushed by the news, Mina complained. Ashido, I thought you were more social than that, Ochako pointed out. I am, but it's just the noise of the crowd that bothers me, Ashido admitted. I definitely feel that, Ashido. Izuku listened in. Good gosh, those reporters were so twisted. Toru joined in as the class chatted. You said it. Kyoka shook her head. Didn't expect to get hounded for an interview about All Might this morning. They shouted so many questions at me, I couldn't get a word in anyway. Rikido scratched his left cheek. I'm glad Hound Dog showed up when he did, Kiro. Tsuyu smiled softly. Yeah, it was getting to be a bit much. Ochako messed with her hair. Take your seats, homeroom is about to start, Aizawa announced as he entered the classroom. And with that, everyone rushed to their seats. You all have an important decision to make, Aizawa told the class. Something that'll affect the entire class dynamic going forwards. The entire class tensed up, expecting something along the lines of expulsion. You need to choose who your class representatives will be. Everyone in the class was shocked. That's so normal, Class 1A exclaimed. I wasn't finished yet, Aizawa scolded the class. You'll all have to decide who will be representing the class before Wednesday, so choose carefully. And with that, one started discussing possible candidates, with almost everyone nominating themselves. Desire doesn't equal ability. The class representative should be someone that everyone can put their trust into, Tenya pointed out to everyone. But Ida, Sue spoke up. We've only known each other for about a week. That's hardly enough time to put at least any trust into one another. Even if that's the case, whoever leads the class has to have the most qualification out of all of us. Momo pointed out. Yayurazu's right. The best way to decide would be to have a vote. Izuku nodded. All of the class nodded, and they decided to vote. The only rule was that they couldn't vote for themselves. After everyone had voted, the results were announced by Tenya. 1 vote for Bakugo, 3 votes for me, 5 votes for Midoriya, and 11 votes for Yayurazu. Tenya read out. Meaning that Yayurazu will be class representative and Midoriya will be vice representative. Izuku stared at the number stunned. Momo was also stunned with the outcome of the vote, beginning to smile. So, your representative is Yayurazu and your vice representative is Midoriya. Aizawa spoke up as the green bean and beef stew stood in front of the class. Izuku was trying not to fidget while Momo smiled. I'll do my best to be worthy of the trust you placed in me. Momo bowed to the class. Izuku started smiling as well, though he didn't get why anyone would want to vote for someone like him. He could end everyone's hero careers. He almost did it to Katsuki when they were kids, but either way, Izuku was happy with being vice representative. Later, after math class, it was time for lunch. My head hurts, Kaminari whined as the Ochaka squad, plus a few others, all went through the lunch line. Are we sure that was high school math? I think ectoplasm has us doing university-level stuff. Not to mention that we already have homework for both English and hero ethics. Mina groaned as she sat down. Homework every class is going to kill me. The students all started to eat. The delicious food went a long way to soothing their woes. Lunch Rush knew exactly how to make comfort food. Even this rice is super tasty, Ochako sighed happily as she ate. She was sitting between Izuku and Tsuyu. I couldn't agree more. Lunch Rush is a truly wonderful chef. Momo smiled as she sat down with the squad, next to Tenya, with Kyoka sitting next to her. After finishing her next bite of food, the creation user asked a question. I must admit, I'm curious as to who voted for whom as the class representative. Would anyone be willing to indulge my curiosity? I voted for Midoriya. He's been such a hero ever since I met him, especially when the entrance exam happened. He took down the 0-pointer when everyone else was either injured or running away, like a coward. Ochako replied to the beef stew's question. Indeed, your heroic traits will definitely pay you off in the future. That's why I voted for you as well. Tenya nodded to Izuku. Thanks, Ida. Though I have a villainous quirk, I definitely know that I'm not a villain. Far from it, actually. Izuku thanked the engine user. I voted for Yaomomo. She's totally super trustworthy of leadership. Not to mention we all know she's easily the smartest in our class. Kyoka smiled at the creation user. She got a beaming smile from Momo in return. Me too. Momo has been awesome. She even agreed to help me with chemistry so I can try and implement some of Midoriya's suggestions to me when he analyzed my quirk. Mina grinned at both of them. Ashido, Jiru. Momo seemed to sparkle as she smiled happily. I'll do my best to live up to your expectations. Thank you for your trust in me. Who did you vote for? Keiken? Izuku asked Katsuki. You, quirkologist. I know how easily you can motivate people to try their hardest, Katsuki explained, beaming with pride in his decision. As the question of who voted for who went around, it was discovered that Mina and Kyoka, along with Denki, Rikido, Koji, Shoto, Fumikage, Mizo, Hanta, Toru, and Hitoshi voted for Momo. Ochako, Tenya, and Katsuki, along with Tsu and Ijiro voted for Izuku. Yuga, Momo, and Ojiro voted for Tenya, and Izuku voted for Katsuki. I don't understand something. Ochako turned to face Tenya. Didn't you really want to become class rep, Ida? You've definitely got the look for it down. Ambition and suitability are different. Tenya shook his head as he explained. I made the choice I felt would be the best. The admiration I hold for my brother is what inspired me to become a hero. However, I realize that I'm not ready to be a leader like him yet. Leadership is something I need to work on. Midoriya outperformed us all in the entrance exams, going on to break the old record and doing so in a manner befitting a hero. He's also been incredibly supportive of the rest of us, freely offering his suggestions to us all. I aspire to match his example to become a true pro hero, too. Aw, Ida, you don't have to be so nice. Izuku blushed, smiling as Tenya smiled back. I'm serious, Midoriya, and the same praise for Momo as well. I know there are a lot of people out there who will be better than me, but I'll eventually get to the point where I'll make my brother proud. Tenya smiled. Just as conversation shifted to a new topic, the group was interrupted by the blaring of an alarm. Everyone in the lunchroom was startled by the sudden noise. Those with sensitive ears, like Izuku or quirks that amplified their sense of hearing like Kyoka, clapped their hands over their ears with cries of pain and shock. A loud, mechanical voice started blasting over the loudspeaker a second later. Attention, security level 3 has been broken. All students must evacuate in an orderly fashion. The message proceeded to loop after that as the cafeteria quickly descended into panic. What's security level 3? Tenya yelled to a third-year student as they stood up. It means someone has infiltrated the building. This has never happened in the 3 years I've been here. Hurry up and get out. The older teen yelled back as he ran. Oh, back off, Mina yelled as an elbow jabbed into her side. The tide of rushing students had swept up their group. In the chaos, Izuku had instinctively grabbed onto the closest of his classmates. In this case, he'd grabbed Kyoka's hands and pulled her near the wall to avoid the crowd a bit. Stay together, guys, Ochako tried to yell over the noise. Hey, Momo yelled as she was shoved to the side and into Toru. People are going to get hurt if this keeps up, Toru yelled as she pushed against the crowd with Mina at her side. It's so loud, Izuku exclaimed, covering his ears with tears forming in his eyes. Tenya had been shoved against the glass, but this let him see outside. The human car gasped when he saw the reporters from this morning on the campus grounds. Somehow they got onto school grounds. He saw several Ada had been shoved against the glass, but this let him see outside. The glasses-wearing teen gaped when he saw the reporters from this morning on the campus grounds. He saw several teachers running towards the reporters. Then he something realized a second later. If the teachers are dealing with the press, then there's no one to turn off the alarm. Everyone will keep panicking unless they're told, Tenya realized. But even as he thought this, he had no idea how to convey it to the panicking crowd of students rushing through the halls. Tenya then saw Izuku on the ground, about to cry with his hands over his ears. Midoriya, Tenya yelled out to the green bean. Iya, Izuku cried out, accidentally referring to Tenya as a combination of his first and last name. Tenya knelt down to the broccoli boy, hoping to get a response from him. Are you okay? Tenya asked the one with all user. Loud was all Izuku could get out before letting out a huge sob. The green-haired boy was obviously feeling overwhelmed by all the chaos around him. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be just fine, Tenya reassured the broccoli boy, rubbing circles into his back. Tenya was shocked to discover Izuku was shaking. Tears rolled down his freckled cheeks like little streams, dripping down onto the ground from his nose. It broke Tenya's heart to see him in such distress. Midoriya, everything is okay. It's just that the press from this morning has intruded onto the school grounds, Tenya told the broccoli boy. Izuku looked out the window and saw the teachers dealing with the issue. But if the teachers are out there, then who's going to shut off the alarm? Izuku realized. We need to find a way to let everyone know it's okay, Tenya said. Then Izuku remembered something. Your quirk. What? Whose quirk? Yours. A long pause. Can I? Izuku hesitated once more, before shaking his hand out and finishing his sentence. Can I copy your quirk? Your quirk. What? Whose quirk? Yours? A long pause. Can I? Izuku hesitated once more, before shaking his hand out and finishing his sentence. Can I copy your quirk? Tenya's eyes widened. Didn't Izuku say that he could steal other quirks? Midoriya, what's your plan? Tenya asked the overstimulated green bean. My quirk allows me to steal the power of emitter and transformation quirks, and I just straight up copy mutant quirks. Izuku explained. I see. So you want to copy my quirk? Tenya asked. If it's okay with you, Izuku nodded. If it'll help diffuse the situation, then yes, I'm more than willing to let you copy my quirk. Tenya smiled. Izuku touched Tenya on his hand, and soon enough, Izuku then sprouted engines on his legs, similar to Tenya's. How good are you at throwing people? Izuku asked Tenya. I've never tried throwing anyone, Tenya pointed out. Can you throw me towards the front of the hallway? Izuku inquired. All right, I'll try. Tenya smiled, picking up Izuku and throwing him. Tenya's throw wasn't exactly powerful, per se, so Izuku didn't go very far until he ran on other people's heads, with his new quirk activated. Sorry, excuse me, sorry, Izuku frantically apologized to everyone whose head was stepped on. As soon as Izuku made it to the exit, he turned off engine, activated tentacles, climbed onto one of the walls, and used rhyming reason on himself. Amplify my voice, so I can let the panicking crowd that they can all rejoice, Izuku whispered to himself. Izuku knew that the effects would only last for 11 minutes, since there were 11 words between his rhyme, so he needed to quickly get his point across. Everyone, please calm down. The press has trespassed onto the school grounds and the teachers are dealing with the issue. Please calm down and walk to your designated evacuation point so that the staff knows your location. Once this is done, we can all return to our normal school day, Izuku informed everyone, his voice amplified. As soon as Izuku's voice amplification wore of Izuku deactivated tentacles, reactivated engine, and ran back to Tenya, as everyone exited the building in a calmer manner. That was really cool, Mina complimented as she and Tsuyu followed behind the others, walking alongside them. You saved us from a bunch of trouble. Thanks, I guess. Izuku shrugged, still a bit shaken up from what just happened. Class 1 made it to their designated evacuation spot without trouble. Almost everyone in the class was praising Izuku for his quick thinking and for taking charge of the emergency situation. Quirkologist, are you okay? Katsuki ran up to Izuku with a concerned look on his face. I'm FF fine, KKK Kaken. Izuku stuttered, holding on tight to his childhood friend. If you need to cry, feel free to do so. I won't judge you. And if anyone has the nerve to judge based on how you convey emotions, I'll blow up those freaks so much, they won't be able to feel their own heads. Katsuki told Izuku, as the green bean casserole dove his head into the jalapeno's chest, starting to silently sob in the comfort of closeness. This intrigued Tenya, who was nearby. He knew that Izuku and Katsuki were close to each other, but he didn't think this close. Then it made Tenya think, why exactly does Katsuki call Izuku Quirkologist? Bakugo, is Midoriya all right? Tenya asked Katsuki. He'll hopefully be fine. The crowd and the noise of the alarm was definitely too much for him. Katsuki replied, gently rocking Izuku back and forth. Now may I ask you another thing? Go ahead, glasses. Why exactly do you call Midoriya Quirkologist? When your Araka presumed that you call him that because you're bad with names, you and him had a look on your faces that said, that isn't it. Katsuki remained silent for a moment, whispering something to Izuku. Is it okay if I tell Ida the meaning behind your nickname? Katsuki asked the green bean, who was still crying in Katsuki's chest. He nodded. Katsuki gestured for Tenya to come closer to him, so nobody would hear him. It all started in junior high, the beginning of it to be exact. Quirkologist was mocked constantly because... Katsuki trailed off, soon coming back into what he was saying. Izuku is different than most other people. Not only because of his quirk, but also, Izuku is autistic. He is on the autism spectrum. And he was bullied for being different. Even back then, he was amazing at analyzing quirks, even without his evaluate quirk, though everyone made fun of him for engaging in analysis. Not only that, he was also bullied before that, simply for being different. You see, back when Izuku was 8, he had a pair of noise-canceling headphones with him anytime it was too loud for him. He used them up until he was 11, which was when he started to get mocked for wearing them. So he stopped wearing them, and even in junior high, he was bullied for being autistic. I was pressured into joining in, but I never gave in. It didn't help that our old school accepted bullying. So, I did the best thing I knew I could do. People would often call him dumb or unnatural, or the most beach out of all of them would dare to call him Red. So what did I do? I gave him a nickname that made him feel like he belonged. One miserable day, I asked him about the stuff that he'd been called, and so, with his permission, I gave him the nickname Quirkologist. Tenya smiled a teary smile, feeling sorry for what the green bean had to go through during junior high. Then, he had gained the courage that most people didn't know about him. I see. Well, if Izuku's listening in, I'm autistic, too. Tenya told both Katsuki and Izuku. Katsuki perked up, starting to smile. That's good to hear. Now I know that I can trust you, and I think Izuku is happy to know that as well. Katsuki told Tenya, making him smile. A few seconds pass, then Izuku lifts his face, now covered in tears, off of Katsuki's chest, which was now also covered in the broccoli boy's tears. Thank you, Izuku smiled, shakily, his voice also pretty shaky. You're welcome, my friend, Tenya smiled. Then Izuku walked forward and hugged Tenya tightly. Ah, Midoriya, you don't have to hug me, Tenya exclaimed, awkwardly trying to push away the green bean's grip. However, Izuku refused to release his death hold on him. Instead, he hugged Tenya tighter, causing Tenya to flinch a little, but smile. Soon, Aizawa came round, as Izuku let go of Tenya. You're all here, good work. Aizawa spoke up a minute later when he rounded the corner. Midoriya, Principal Nezu wants to see you after school today. Why yes, Aizawa-sensei. Izuku nodded, his voice still kind of shaky. CC, can I ask WWY? Lunch Rush saw what you did during the emergency and how you managed to let everyone know what was going on with the reporters. He told Nezu and the principal wants to personally thank you. Aizawa informed his class's vice representative. Yes, SS-sensei. Izuku couldn't stop the small happy smile that formed on his face. But ICC can't take all of the CR credit. Ida managed to SSSS spot the PP press intruding, and told me THTH that, and he let me copy his quirk, which made it easier for me TTT to crowd us as a surf to let everyone know about how the press W was intruding. Now that the police are dealing with the intruders, we can resume our normal school activities. Aizawa informed the class as he led them back to their classroom. Though, what nobody knew was that the barrier that was supposed to keep intruders out of UA had somehow been disintegrated. It was turned to dust somehow, and with none of the reporters having a quirk capable of that, the situation as it seemed was quite mysterious. Nezu had already gotten Power Loader to look at the barrier to see what had happened, but both of them were just overseeing the issue. Clearly there was trouble about to arise, a threat that nobody was expecting. Izuku stood nervously outside Principal Nezu's office. It was after school and the broccoli boy had reported as requested. He knew, according to Aizawa, that the principal wanted to thank him for his actions in the hallway during the break-in. Still, this was the principal of UA High for crying out loud. Izuku knew Nezu was a pro hero too, one of the top investigation heroes in the world. It only made sense that he was quite nervous to meet the principal because of that. Feel free to come in, Midoriya. Nezu chuckled and Izuku started as he realized the door to the office had been opened while he was thinking. Nezu chuckled as he motioned for Izuku to follow him into the office. Izuku was offered a seat and the multi-quirk teen sat down. Nezu went around his desk and hopped up into his chair. Once the two were settled, Nezu smiled at the teen. First, I'd like to thank you for your actions today, Midoriya. They were prompt, efficient, and, most of all, successful. You handled that situation like a true pro hero. You're welcome, Mr. Nezu, Izuku bowed. But I can't take all of the credit. Tenya Ida managed to spot the press intruding and told me that the press was intruding, and he let me copy his quirk, which made it easier for me to crowd surf to let everyone know about how the press was intruding. I see. Well, I'll thank him personally tomorrow. Nezu smiled. Now I was thinking, would you be willing to help me and Power Loader with an investigation? What kind? Izuku inquired. When I got Power Loader to check what happened to the barrier, and he told me that it was disintegrated. And so, I wanted to see if you wanted to help us out and see what could have caused it. Nezu offered. Ah, sure, Izuku replied. All right, head outside and check back with me tomorrow to tell me your findings. Nezu instructed. Okay, thank you very much. Izuku bowed again, getting up from his seat. Bye, Mr. Nezu. See you tomorrow, Izuku, Nezu replied. Izuku left the office, making his way towards the now destroyed barrier of Yua. As Izuku was investigating, Katsuki ran up to him. Quirkologist, how'd the meeting with Nezu go? Katsuki asked Izuku. It went fine, and he wants me to look at the remains of the Yua barrier. Apparently that's how the press managed to intrude on the campus. Somehow it was destroyed. Izuku explained. Oh, really? What did it look like? Katsuki questioned eagerly, looking over Izuku's shoulder at the remains of the Yua barrier. Well, Izuku hummed, trailing off slightly. He said it was destroyed, but he said I should try looking at the remains to see what exactly could have done it. So, basically, he wanted you to look at something he doesn't know about? Katsuki questioned, taking notes. Yeah, it seems that way, Izuku agreed. Huh, sounds exciting, Katsuki grinned. Yeah, but, Izuku sighed, a frown forming on his face. I know why he wants me to check out what happened, but it sounds kinda dangerous to do. Definitely a villain out there who wants to attack Yua. Meanwhile, in a bar-like setting, two villains were talking. One looked like he was made up of purple fog, and the other had light blue hair, and looked like he needed some chapstick. Did you find out more about the boy's whereabouts? The fog guy inquired. Of course I have. And I figured out the best way to finally get him to join the league. And that is? We attack the unforeseen simulation joint. It's connected to the place where All Might teaches, Yua. Wednesday will be the day that we attack, since it's when those UA students, including Midoriya, will go there, and All Might will be accompanying them. So it'll be killing two birds with one stone. Exactly. When do you want me to get the Nami ready? Immediately. We only have a day until our missions. Kidnap Izuku Midoriya and kill All Might. I'll get onto it right away, Shigaraki. I knew I could trust you, Kurogiri. The next day, Izuku woke up earlier than usual, mostly to start working on Momo's new costume. Since the previous day, Momo had given Izuku a picture of her current hero costume, so he wanted to get onto it when he could. A bit more protection for the legs and knees, Izuku mumbled to himself as he sketched. Momo's need for skin exposure for her quirk was doable, but she was clearly very uncomfortable with it. So Izuku had made a modified top for the redesign. It would provide support while covering Momo's chest and neck. A zipper would hold the top closed, but also make it possible to create more skin exposure if absolutely necessary. This would also leave the majority of her back exposed, the largest amount of surface area on the human body, so she could easily create larger items. The shorts he'd sketched would cover more than her current leotard did as well. They went down to just above mid-thigh and had a utility belt stitched onto them, allowing Momo to carry supplies into the field. This left her stomach fully exposed from just under the top down to her hips, another large skin surface area she could use for bigger creations. This left more of her arms revealed for making small items on the fly. He also incorporated some elbow pads to protect the joint and enable Momo to throw elbow strikes with more force if necessary. Finally, he was finishing up his sketch with her boots. The ones she currently had were heeled, which wasn't as practical for Momo's mobility, so he'd made the design with standard soles and had them go up to just under her knee. The sketch added shin guards to protect her legs and allow the option of more damaging kicks. A set of knee pads to protect her joints, and he felt the design was complete. Momo was covered and protected better, but still had her back, stomach, and most of her arms and legs completely exposed for her quirk. After he finished his design, Izuku went out for his morning run. Though, this time, it would be different. Izuku wore longer breathe, so he could hide the fact that he was using engine, aka his new quirk he had gotten from his second best friend. Izuku wanted to train it so he could control it better. Plus, it would be useful for running or fighting, especially if he ever needed to flee from something, like, say, a building that was about to fall down. Today, he would focus on strengthening his speed, so he could avoid falling flat on his face after running laps. His endurance was also important, though it didn't hurt his overall agility in a fight, so he was already improving his stamina levels. The training he was doing was a nice distraction, and he found that he liked having his mind focused on something. It allowed him to keep his emotions and thoughts in check during his workouts. Once he got home and changed clothes, he headed downstairs to watch TV. Izuku loved watching the news and staying up to date with the world. It seemed to calm and ease him enough to relax. The latest story on the news was about the press trespassing onto Yua yesterday, and that they would be forced to apologize to the entire staff for causing an entire ruckus. Serves them right. Izuku chuckled, taking notes about most of the stories covered. As for the disintegration of the Yua barrier, the cause of it is currently unknown, but what is known at the moment, all is known is that someone with a decaying quirk is behind this. But who? It's unknown about the true details of this, but we are confident it is a villain. The anchorman reported. After Izuku had gotten ready for school, he and Katsuki had walked there, having a pleasant discussion, which was mostly just Izuku info-dumping about what he saw on the news. Katsuki listened quietly with great interest and nodded occasionally, letting Izuku continue speaking. By the time Izuku entered the classroom, Katsuki was already seated and waiting for their teacher to arrive. Izuku sat down and started writing in his notebook. After a few more minutes pass, Momo walks into the classroom. Izuku sees her and runs up to her. "Good morning, Yairazu. I finished the design sketch, if you want to look at it." Izuku smiled. The moment she registered his words, her eyes lit up, and she appeared to have sparkles around her as she almost bounced in excitement. "Thank you, Midoriya," Momo smiled brightly at him. When Momo opened the notebook to the marked page, she was stunned. There she was on the page, very well drawn, in a hero costume that looked every bit as good as what a professional support company could design. "Midoriya, I had no idea you were so talented at sketching and design." Momo was very surprised with the amount of effort the broccoli boy had put in the design. Izuku rubbed the back of his head and fought against the smile that tried its hardest to form. He wasn't exactly used to getting compliments from people, especially smart people like Momo. "I've just had a lot of practice sketching over the years." Izuku waved off, trying less and less to hide the smile that was forming on his face. Momo smiled back and then said, "Well, it looks wonderful. I can't wait to give it to the support company so they can upgrade my costume." She gave a thumbs up. Izuku smiled at this. Maybe for once, he could belong somewhere and not get bullied for simply being different from everyone else. Not everyone has a quirk that would belong to a villain, after all. Oh, and then there was his autism as well. The day of Wednesday was a wonderful, despite the word Wednesday being hard to spell most of the time. It was the time of day where heroics class finally came after a hard day of learning stuff. The class would be learning stuff in heroics, but at least it's actually helped them later in life, since Class 1A is in the hero course, and they're training to be heroes, so knowing how to be heroes would actually be important for them. Today you'll be doing rescue training to prepare you for floods, fires, and other disasters. Aizawa spoke up. The class instantly froze in place. No one had even seen him come in. They all quickly settled and sat with perfect posture. Now, it's up to you to choose whether to wear your costume or not. Some of them may not be suitable for certain scenarios. The location we'll be training at is a bit remote, so we'll be going by bus. That'll be all. Get ready and don't waste time. He gave them a hard stare before grabbing his yellow sleeping bag and leaving the room. Rescue training, Izuku murmured to himself as he grabbed his case. He thought of the many, many times he'd watched All Might's debut video growing up. This was a chance to see if he could really be a hero capable of working in all fields. His gaze sharpened with determination as he headed for the locker room. Izuku took a quick shower before getting dressed into his costume. He put his respirator on and checked for anything out of place, nothing before opening the door and walking outside, where the Achika squad was waiting for him, as usual. You look super excited. Ochako giggled as Izuku flipped through the pages of his notebook. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty excited. Thanks, Izuku smiled, starting to bounce a little bit. Soon, the bus arrived. The bus turned out to be an open seating type, so everyone quickly found their own seats as Momo guided everyone onto the bus, taking her role of class representative with pride. Izuku ended up between Katsuki and Ochako. Behind the three were Tenya, Tsu, and Ishido, and in front of them were Rikido, Denki, and Hitoshi. Suo, Midoriya, if it's okay for me to, can I ask you some questions about your quirk? Ochako piped up, starting a conversation. Sure, you're Araka, Izuku beamed. Ask away. Okay, well, what exactly is your limit to your quirk? Ochako asked. Well, my most powerful quirks are my emitter quirks, because they steal the most power. Since the overall power that I steal is my age times the original user's age. Then there are transformation quirks. Since they're in between emitters and mutants, they're also the in-between of power, if that makes sense. When I take a transformation quirk, the overall power is my age times half of the original user's age. Though for mutant types, I just copy them. Izuku explained. And I can also give my stockpiled quirks to others. If I'm giving the original user's quirk back to them, then the quirk's power is the original. But if I'm giving a person a quirk that's different to their own, then the power level is also transferred. So, how many quirks do you have at the moment? Ochako asked. Well, I have 12 emitter quirks, 8 transformation quirks, and 5 mutant quirks, which means I have 25 quirks in total. Izuku replied, smiling. Is there a limit to how many quirks you can have stockpiled? Ochako continued to ask her questions. From what Evaluate tells me, my limit of stockpiled quirks is 1,000, which is definitely a lot. Izuku giggled. And my other weaknesses are that I forcefully activate a quirk whenever I steal one or in a mutant type case, copy one. Speaking of mutant types, they're the hardest for me to control, since they require a ton of concentration to activate. Since my body isn't fit for some mutant quirks, so my body has to try and adapt immediately. And deactivating them takes concentration as well, since my body has to reverse itself from what it adapted. Do you have any other notable weaknesses? Ochako asked. Well, yeah. I can't use a quirk combination of more than 5 quirks, as you've seen, and I can't use more than 2 quirks in a combination, though one day I'll hopefully be able to use more quirks in a combination, Izuku explained. A few minutes later, Aizawa piped up. We're here. Look sharp now. Aizawa slipped out of his sleeping bag with practiced ease as he stood up and led them off the bus. A few short minutes saw everyone off the bus and walking into the gigantic dome-shaped building. When they saw what was inside the building, most of the students let out excited exclamations. "Holy crap! Are we at Universal Studios Japan?" Denki questioned gleefully, making several others turn and deadpan at him. "Not quite," a voice that seemed like it was being heard through a speaker or old radio called out to them. Ochako let out a loud gasp as the group turned to face the speaker. "There's the flood zone, the conflagration zone, the landslide zone, every disaster you can imagine." The woman speaking wore a very puffy astronaut-styled suit and yellow shoes. Her arms were held wide as if to welcome them all. "Oh!" Izuku exclaimed, his eyes bright as he recognized the hero. "It's Space Hero 13. She's one of the top-rated rescue heroes in Japan." "I freaking love 13. Ochako was bouncing up and down in excitement, her brown eyes sparkling as she looked at the pro. Izuku was fairly certain he now knew who Ochako's favorite hero was. "All right, settle down, everyone," 13 commanded. "This training ground that I created is the perfect site to put your heroism to the test. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint." 13, "Where's All Might? I thought he was supposed to be meeting us here." Aizawa questioned his colleague. "Well," 13 sighed, before subtly holding up 3 fingers, "I'm afraid he got caught up in quite a few incidents on his way to the school this morning. He's exhausted himself. He's resting in the break room right now, though he did call to tell me he would try to make it to the latter half of the class. That man is the height of irrationality. At this point, he should just move on to the campus already and be done with it." Aizawa sighed while pinching the bridge of his nose. "Well, no point in wasting time. We'll start without him." "Of course. But before that, I have 1 or 2 points," 13 said before pausing. "Or 3, maybe 4. Her voice started sounding a bit sheepish as she continued. "Perhaps 5 or 6. The entire class deadpanned and sweat dropped. "Well, as I'm sure many of you are aware, my quirk is called Black Hole. It draws in and breaks down everything." Ochako was excitedly nodding along with their instructor, her eyes still sparkles. Izuku couldn't help but find her actions adorable. She was so cute. "Yeah, you've used it to save countless numbers of people in almost every disaster imaginable. You break down debris and free trapped civilians and even clear roadways for medical vehicles, police, firefighters, and everything." Ochako did her best Izuku impression without even meaning to. She was just so excited. "That's right. Indeed, my power is capable of saving many lives. But it would also be incredibly, frustratingly easy to use it to kill." That put a damper on the excited mood of the students, bringing down the intensity so they were all paying attention. "Just as I'm sure it would be uncomfortably easy for some of your own quirks to take a life. In our super-powered society, the usage of quirks is heavily restricted and monitored. It may seem like a stable system, but never forget that it only takes one wrong move with an uncontrollable quirk for people to die." 13 warned the hero students. During Eraserhead's assessment test, you were able to touch upon the true power of your quirks. With All Might's person-to-person hero scenarios, you experienced the danger of using your quirks against other people. Today will be a different story. Today you shall learn how your powers can be used, not in combat, but how they can be used to save lives instead. The space hero had her arms spread wide, as if to indicate the whole of the Asti behind her. Before 13 could continue, the lights all over the dome began to flicker strangely. Everyone looked around in confusion at the odd phenomenon. Denki, whose quirk involved electricity, blinked and tilted his head. He recognized the signs of fluctuating electrical output after all. "What's going on?" Aizawa questioned as he took charge. His students were his first priority in the event anything unplanned happened. "Something's gone wrong with the power?" 13 sounded confused as she looked up at the flickering lights. It was his experience that drew Aizawa's attention to the small distortion forming down in the plaza. The underground hero glared at the anomaly as he reached into his scarves to pull up his goggles. Ever so suddenly, a person made of purple fog with two glowing eyes appeared out of nowhere, and several villains stepped out. One of them was the guy who needed chapstick in the previous chapter, but this time he has severed hands all around himself. How disturbing. This isn't part of the class, is it? Ijiro questioned as everyone was looking at the large group coming from the smoke-like portal. No, Aizawa stated flatly, his tone dead serious. Those are villains. 13. Aren't there intruder sensors here? Momo asked the pro. Of course, there are, but they're not activating. I'm even using the manual override. 13 revealed the small device in her hand. It was a control for the Ustis systems. The touchscreen was filled with a single large message that said, Error 403. System has timed out. Enjoy the chaos. Kaminari, try to reach the school with your personal communicator. Aizawa instructed. Yes, sir, Denki nodded as he tapped the device on his ear. Oh, damn it, the blonde cried out a second later as he practically tore the communicator off his ear. Even from a distance, everyone could hear the horribly loud shrieking of feedback interference coming from the device. They've jammed the frequencies, he called out as he held his ringing ear. I doubt they snuck into the main campus as well. They picked the perfect time to attack here, with the fewest pros and multiple targets. They clearly have an objective and have brought in quirks to reach that objective, which includes someone capable of jamming outgoing signals. Katsuki pointed out. Then, why come here at all? What are they trying to achieve? If they want to capture heroes, they should go after the UA faculty alone, Mina shouted out. The large, swirling smoke-like portal closed after a large monstrosity of a creature emerged and stood behind the man covered in severed hands. Izuku would have tried to count how many villains there were, but he was dealing with something he'd never dealt with before. The large creature was grating against his quirk's sensing ability. It came off as a mutant type, but it wasn't just one. That shouldn't be possible in most normal circumstances. That big one, the monster-looking thing, it has multiple quirks, mutant types. I just don't know what they are, Izuku exclaimed. Aizawa's eyebrows rose at the information given to him by Problem Child #2. What do you mean? Aizawa questioned as the class was quickly gathering between the two pros. Multiple quirks were an incredible rarity. Most people that appeared to have two quirks often had a hybrid of their parents with abilities from both. Todoroki was a perfect example. To actually have two completely separate quirks was something like 1 in 100 million odds. I don't understand it. I've never sensed things like this before. Izuku shook his head and wiped the sweat from his brow. The suit-wearing guy, the one that created the fog, gate, or whatever, he has two quirks, one mutant, the other emitter, but it's not right. Not right. How? Aizawa needed clarification. Midoriya was obviously dealing with something he'd never encountered, and it was making the teen lose focus. His emitter quirk, it's one quirk, but not really. I don't know how to explain it. 3 quirks least. How? I don't understand. It's like someone forced 3 different quirks together and made them one quirk. Izuku was holding his head at this point. This didn't make sense. Something wasn't right, but there was no way of telling exactly what it was. His thoughts were starting to get a little chaotic as he was overwhelmed by the feeling. This is strange. The man spoke with a raspy voice. The schedule we stole said All Might, 13, Eraserhead, and Class 1A would be here. So where's All Might? He questioned, scratching at his neck, his red eyes staring at everyone up on the platform with nothing but disgust. All of Class 1A felt a tremor go up their spines at the look. It was, to put it simply, inhuman. Whatever, Midoriya's here, so let's just grab the kid and go, one of the villains snarled. 13, get the students out of here, Aizawa ordered as he pulled on his goggles and leapt down the stairs towards the large group of villains. With his capture scarves in hand, he picked out his first targets. 13 was corralling the students and urging them towards the exit, but that option was quickly cut off when the security shutters around the USG began to slam closed. The humanoid fog villain appeared in front of them. Izuku's evaluate quirk was still trying to puzzle out what the hell was going on with this guy. His head had never hurt like this from any of his analysis. Good afternoon, hero students. Several of the class dropped into fighting stances in front of the villain as 13 quickly placed herself between the villain and the students. We are the League of Villains. I hope you'll forgive our audacity, but we are here today with a declaration of war. His courteous tone did nothing to hide the outright lack of care he had for their lives. It made a few of the students of class 1 a shiver in fear. To that end, we have come to this bastion of heroism to kill the symbol of peace along with kidnap the one with all user, or as you all know him as, Izuku Midoriya. The villain explained as though he was discussing plans of action rather than a simple declaration of war. There was silence for a moment as the class watched on with wide and fearful eyes. The air was getting thicker, and every student could feel it pressing against them. The tension and danger thick enough to almost choke on. Izuku was too panicked to think. All he knew to think was, oh no. So without thinking, Izuku used a transformative combination of quirks. Gunpoint plus Jelly Surprise plus Rock Plates. Izuku accurately shot Jelly Surprise at Shigaraki, while also protecting himself with his rock plates. Oh, you're totally going to regret that one. Kirigiri, you know what to do. The villainous man ordered the fog guy. Before Kirigiri could follow his leader's command, 13 used her quirk on the blocked entrance. Ida, go alert the other teachers about this. You're the fastest of us, so don't screw up and go get reinforcements, 13 ordered Tenya. Will do, Tenya saluted, running to do the thing he needed to do. No! The humanoid fog yelled before his tactic suddenly changed and 13 saw a spiraling warp gate appear directly in front of her. She was going to suck it into her quirk as well, until she felt a powerful pull on the back of her own costume. With a painful cry, she deactivated her quirk just as her suit was torn away and broken down into the warp gate behind her. The villain had turned her own quirk against her. She could feel her back, partially shredded by her own quirk, and then her vision went fuzzy and she got a light-headed sensation as she collapsed to the floor. 13, Ochako screamed loudly as they all watched the pro-hero hit the ground. Now begone! The villain outright roared as his quirk washed over the group like a tidal wave. This isn't good. 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 This isn't good, Izuku muttered, starting to hyperventilate, bringing back traumatic memories of his past. Please just stop. Just stop. No, stop. No, stop. Stop. Please just stop. Please. Midoriya, Aijiro called softly as he slowly approached his friend, gently placing a hand on Izuku's shaking shoulder. The greenette didn't seem to notice or care at first. The only noise he made was heavy breathing that sounded like he was choking. Oh shit. Katsuki soon realized something. Izuku was going through a PTSD episode. But then, another shitty thing was happening. Everyone was being warped off to completely different zones. This was surely going to be a fun ride. All Izuku saw was black. He felt weightless for a bit, and then gravity seemingly reasserted itself just as light reappeared. The greenette splashed down into deep water and struggled to right himself. He just barely caught the vague movements of a silhouette from the corner of his eye when it abruptly filled his entire field of vision at an incredible speed. Midoriya swam in, out of nowhere, and delivered a powerful double kick to the shark form user's face. Her long, prehensile tongue shot out and wrapped around his waist, and with a powerful kick of her legs, they were rocketing towards the surface. In just a few short moments, Izuku was tossed onto the deck of the fake yacht. Is Midoriya all right? Hitoshi asked the frog girl. Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks, Tsu. Izuku thanked as he glanced over the edge of the boat to see over a couple dozen villains in the water. No problem, Kiro. but we seem to be in trouble here, Midoriya," Tsu mentioned, looking over the edge as well. "There are so many villains," Izuku exclaimed, freaking out again. "Wait a second. Was anyone else teleported here with us?" Hitoshi asked. "I couldn't see anyone else in the water, so I don't think so, Kiro," Tsu replied. Meanwhile, at the mountain zone, there were even more villains than the flood zone, which left the ones that fell there surrounded. "What the?" Tyoka cursed as she, Momo, and Denki were surrounded. The last few moments had been a blur for them, being engulfed in the black-purple fog, the feeling of weightlessness, followed by the sensation of falling. The trio had landed, unsteadily, on the rocks of the mountain they'd seen on the other side of the Asti. The villains had literally been lying in wait for them. "Uh-oh, looks like this'll likely be the end of us," Denki exclaimed. "Not if we can help ourselves," Momo exclaimed, creating weapons for the three of them. They were not gonna die today. They had survived much worse. They just couldn't stand here and wait to die. Meanwhile, in the ruins zone, Katsuki and Ejiro were teleported there, and Katsuki was not happy about it in the slightest. Most of all, he was worried about Izuku. "Out of my way!" the jalapeno yelled as he blasted a large villain aside with his quirk. The two had proven to be more than their opposition expected as they'd broken through the encirclement and were now fighting their way through the horde of thugs. "Stay down," Ejiro barked as he landed his hardened fist into the gut of another villain. The thug collapsed, holding his stomach, and his eyes rolled up a second later as he lost consciousness. "It's like there's no end to them. I wonder how Quirkologist is doing," Katsuki muttered. "Of course he's afraid of villains, but this amount of them seems excessive." "Is that why Midoriya was having that panic attack when the villains first showed up?" Ejiro questioned. "Yeah, when he was younger, he was constantly attacked by villains trying to kidnap him. His fear is the result of his PTSD." Katsuki nodded, continuing to fight the villains. Soon, Katsuki was jumped on by a villain that looks like a chameleon. "Oh, die, you!" Katsuki yelled, blasting the villain. "Please, sir, let me live. I have an imaginary family I just made up. You wouldn't hurt a family guy, would ya?" the chameleon villain pleaded, before being blasted again in the face by Katsuki. Soon, more villains had surrounded the duo, but this gave Katsuki an idea. "Listen up, you damn villains. If it's Izuku you want, then I'll lead you to him." Katsuki smirked. This made them all interested. "Just wait here, hard head, and I will go get him." Katsuki nodded as he and Ejiro walked off, hoping to find Izuku. "Whoa, crazy perceptive. Are you really going to give up Midoriya just like that?" Ejiro asked the jalapeno, concerned. "No, we're just going to give Quirkologists some more quirks, since most of them are all the same, just with different executions," Katsuki replied, before proceeding to break the fourth wall. "I'm pretty sure Knight just got ideas for Izuku's stockpiled quirks from the Superpower Wiki and called it a day." "Are you sure we're supposed to be breaking the fourth wall?" Ejiro soon asked. "Meh, whatever. People will probably skip over this section and find the next part with Quirkologist in it." Katsuki apathetically shrugged. "True, true." Ejiro also shrugged. Meanwhile, back at the flood zone, Izuku, Tsu, and Hitoshi were assessing the situation. These guys are all suited for aquatic combat. That means they knew about the Usti's layout. But they warped Tsuyu here, who's perfect in this zone, so it's likely that they don't know about our quirks, except for mine. Izuku was mentally putting the pieces together to try and figure a way out of their current situation. These guys also haven't tried to climb on board the boat. That means they're best suited to aquatic combat, or their quirks might literally require them to be in direct contact with water to work. We can take advantage of that. "What's the plan, Kiro?" Tsu asked. "They don't know our quirks, and I assume that they don't know about my stockpiled quirks, so we need to work with the element of surprise here," Izuku explained. "Speaking of quirks, Shinso, what's your quirk?" Tsu asked Hitoshi. "I can do two things. I can mind control people as long as they respond to me in a conversation. Hitoshi explained. And I have super strength, but it comes at a price. Once I use it, I'm pretty much out of commission. Oh yeah, you have 2 quirks, right? Izuku asked. Hitoshi immediately looked like a mixture of flustered and angered. What? No, you're the only one with more than 1 quirk, Hitoshi yelled, slightly scaring Izuku. Shintoshi, I didn't mean to. I thought that. I'm sorry. Izuku apologized. Do you often combine people's names like that? Hitoshi asked, raising an eyebrow. Only when I'm anxious, Izuku answered, somewhat sheepishly. Whatever, let's just keep our focus on escaping this place alive first, Hitoshi exclaimed. In that moment, Izuku was freaking out. Izuku, come with us. The League of Villains will become even greater with you on our side. Come on, Izuku. All for One will be very proud to have you join the League. We're waiting, Izuku. Izuku started to hyperventilate as his trauma started coming back to him. He felt his breathing start speeding up and saw black spots appear in front of his vision. It seemed that everything was going crazy in his head all of a sudden. His heartbeat picked up to the point where it sounded loud in his ears. Everything became too overwhelming, and he started shaking and hyperventilating. However, Tsu walked up to Izuku and hugged him from behind. "Ishhh, just breathe, Kiro," Tsu instructed, calmly. "You're safe, I'm here. Take deep breaths. In, out, in, out." Izuku stopped hyperventilating, but he was still shaking like a leaf. "Midoriya, what can you tell me about your quirks?" Tsu asked the broccoli boy. "Evaluate, an emitter quirk that allows me to analyze other people's quirks. Ignite, a transformation quirk that allows me to ignite parts of my body in flames, but my body heat depletes whenever in use. Tentacles, a mutant quirk that gives me tentacles that I can use at will. Hold up, an emitter quirk that allows me to hold my targets in place and move them in that state. Sparks Fly, an emitter quirk that allows me to either pull people near each other or push people away from each other, literally. Gunpoint, a transformation quirk that allows me to have an accurate target on anything. Ice Blade, a transformation quirk that allows me to turn my hand into a blade of ice. Brain Curdle, an emitter quirk that allows me to brainwash anyone as long as I have a sample of the person's BLD. Regeneration, an emitter quirk that allows me to give targets or myself a small healing factor. Rock Plates, a transformation quirk that allows me to form rocky plates on whatever part of my body. Web Shoot, an emitter quirk that allows me to shoot out webs, which can be used to trap people or just for swinging around. Gummy Body, a mutant quirk that gives me an elastic body. Vine Whips, a mutant quirk that gives me whips made out of vines. Jelly Surprise, an emitter quirk that allows me to create a jelly that traps its targets within itself. Rhyming Reason, an emitter quirk that allows me to rhyme a phrase of words and the sentence becomes true. Heart Bomb, a transformation quirk that allows me to create shockwaves using my own heartbeat, though overuse results in heart failure. Hot Wings, a transformation quirk that allows me to form flaming wings on my back. Objectify, an emitter quirk that allows me to change objects based on what they're made of. Chameleon, a transformation quirk that allows me to change my color and make myself invisible. Ink Blast, an emitter quirk that allows me to blast ink out of my hands. Handcuff, an emitter quirk that allows me to handcuff an opponent to anything. Weight Loss, a transformation quirk that allows me to lessen my weight, but cannot gain weight unless going back to my original weight. Radio Signal, a mutant quirk that makes my mind connected to radio signals. Attraction of Small Objects, an emitter quirk that allows me to use a telekinesis-like power that attracts small objects to me. And Engine, mutant quirk that gives me car-like engines in each of my calves. Izuku explained, slowly calming down. "That's it, just calm down for me, Kiro," Tsu whispered to Izuku. Though, before Izuku calmed down completely, a large arm made of water started destroying the boat. Holy shit, Izuku exclaimed, the panic coming back to him. There's gotta be a way out of this, Hitoshi guessed. Then Hitoshi got an idea, though it was less than ideal. Hitoshi had picked up Izuku and threw him into the water, and then Izuku started screaming. Shinso Hitoshi, what the foo? Izuku screamed, before being pulled underwater. Whoa, dude, and we thought you were trying to be a hero, one of the villains pointed out, making Hitoshi blush. You know, they aren't wrong, even if they are villains. Tsu agreed. Meanwhile, Izuku was pulled underwater by two villains. One was wearing a black, full-body wetsuit with shoulder pads, accompanied by gray gloves and armor like boots. The other one was wearing a black jumpsuit, matching gloves, and a wireless headset. We've finally got you, Izuku, the first villain exclaimed. Now let's get you to Shigaraki, before you drown, the other villain smirked. Asuyu, Izuku yelled. Izuku struggled to escape the villain's grasp. In an attempt to get himself free, he activated Evaluate so he could learn more about the villain's quirks. That first villain has an emitter quirk called Water Control, which allows him to freely control and manipulate water. The other villain has a mutant quirk called Oxygen, which allows him to generate oxygen for himself in places that contain no oxygen. Izuku thought to himself. In an act of self-defense, Izuku placed both of his hands on the villains' heads, taking and copying their quirks. Before long, Izuku pulled himself out of the water, while involuntarily using water control. When Izuku was in the air, Tsu jumped out of the boat while holding Hitoshi and grabbed Izuku, using her tongue. Take this, Delaware Smash, Hitoshi shouted, using his second quirk, making a whirlpool in the water. Soon enough, Tsu realized that she was losing altitude. We're going down, Tsu exclaimed. Not if I can help it, Izuku yelled. Hot wings plus web shoot plus engine. Izuku formed two flaming wings on his back, while forming engines on his legs, shooting strong threads of webbing out of his fingertips, using this momentum from the webs to launch the trio towards the plaza, where Eraserhead was fighting several of the villains. When the three landed, Izuku deactivated his quirks, and noticed that Katsuki and Ejiro were there, with relieved looks on their faces. Quirkologist, we thought you were dead meat out there, Katsuki sighed. I almost was. Izuku nodded. Katsuki immediately pulled him into a tight hug. Speaking of quirks, Crazy Perceptive thought you could use some more quirks, Ejiro said. But just as long as you're okay with it. Katsuki followed up, letting go of Izuku. Ah, sure, Izuku nodded. Meanwhile, back at Yua, in one of the staff rooms, Toshinori was trying to contact someone on the phone. The number you have dialed is not in service or has been temporarily disconnected. The phone service informed. Please check the number, and then try again. Thank you. Toshinori began to sigh. Can't get through to 13 or Aizawa. Toshinori sighed. Then again, they are teaching. Unlike me. Toshinori began to dial the number again. I'm neglecting my duties because I spent the entire morning commute being heroic. An amateur move. What was I thinking? Toshinori thought to himself out loud. Maybe I should just show up and say something inspiring at the end. Yeah, that'll work. Get a good 10 minutes out of my hero form. Time to join my student before... Hold your horses, Nezu called out. Hello, Nezu, sir, Toshinori grunted. What may I do for you? That's me, the one who could be a mouse, or a dog, or a bear, though the only important thing is... Nezu smiled. I'm the principal. Your fur looks especially well-groomed and glossy today, sir. Toshinori complimented. Why, thank you, Toshinori. The secret is keratin. Nezu smirked. I'm not sure that humans can get this kind of lustrous shine. Toshinori began to look away from Nezu for a moment, to continue to dial the number he was trying to dial. But we can talk about grooming later. Look at the news, Nezu exclaimed. Shall I read it to you? Go ahead. It says you resolved 3 incidents in just 1 hour. And your point is? The fault mainly belongs to the ruffians who still cause trouble in this city despite you being here. Nezu shook his head. But you also have to learn not to react every time you hear of an haven't changed in all these years. But I'm a hero. It's what I do, Toshinori retaliated. You're still the same old goody-goody, only now, your heroism must be limited due to your injury. Plus, you've also got the added work of training one for all's successor. You insist on remaining the symbol of peace, and the only way you can justify staying out of the spotlight is being a teacher here at UA. Nezu lectured Toshinori. That's why I gave you this job, despite the fact that you have no teaching experience. Well, you're not wrong about that. Toshinori shrugged, soon hearing a knock on the door. I'll get it. At the door, Tenya was there, drenched in sweat. Villains are attacking the Ustja, Tenya loudly informed, startling both the principal and the #1 hero. Tenya Ida, from Class 1F, correct? What's the situation? Nezu inquired. A horde of villains appear through a portal, and everyone is in danger, Tenya explained. Toshinori, go inform as many staff members as you can. We're going to need as much help as we can get, Nezu ordered, rushing out of the room. There's no time to lose. Yes, sir, Toshinori nodded, soon noticing Tenya mumbling to himself. Did I do the right thing? Tenya mumbled to himself. I just left them there. Toshinori walked up to the engine user. Are you all right, young man? Toshinori asked Tenya. Are you hurt anywhere? Do you need to go see Recovery Girl? Yes. No, I don't. Tenya proceeded to look at the ground. I'm fine, but my friends, I just left them there. I have no idea if they're okay or if any of them got hurt. And then there's 13 and Aizawa. Young man, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have known that something was up until it was way too late, Toshinori encouraged the boy. Now we have the odds in our favor, so let's show these villains why they should never have messed with Yua. Tenya began to smile. Thank you, sir. That's just what I needed. Back at the Ustja, at the ruins zone, the villain were just standing there, smiling. Katsuki and Izuku walked up to the villains. All right, you can move when I say so, Katsuki commanded. Quirkologist, whenever you're ready. Izuku proceeded to touch each of the villains. Unknowingly to them, he had taken their quirks. A list of the quirks taken. Horns, a mutant quirk that gives the user big, strong horns. Lion's Roar, an emitter quirk that allows the user to roar loudly like a lion. Fireworks, an emitter quirk that allows the user to fire out small fire bullets that explode on contact. Strong Jaw, a transformation quirk that allows the user to embiggen their jaw. Stripe, a mutant quirk that gives the user black stripes that they can use as small whips. Crystallize, a transformation quirk that allows the user to turn into a crystalline person. Balloon, an emitter quirk that allows the user to produce balloons inflated with helium. Kitten, a mutant quirk that gives the user the agility of a cat. Iron Defense, a transformation quirk that covers the body in iron to protect against almost everything. The only weakness is a fire or an enough powerful explosion. Burning Hands, a transformation quirk that once activated can burn almost everything through the user's hands heating up. Its weakness is ice, water, and overheating itself using it. Charge Thunder, an emitter quirk that produces electricity, of which it hits everyone surrounding the user regardless if they are friends or enemies. The only weakness known is that it needs 3 minutes to charge. Bug Bite, an emitter quirk that paralyzes the target when bitten. How long varies from how the user feels about the target. Mindful Aura, a mutant quirk that makes the user able to read the mind of anyone in a 30 m range of them. Bloody Sharp, a transformation quirk that allows the user to make sharp objects using their blood, but it weakens the user whenever a construct is used. Bone, a mutant quirk that makes the user's bones unbreakable. Then, Katsuki realized something. Can we move yet? One of the villains asked. Not yet. Just wait a while, Katsuki smiled, dragging Izuku out of the ruins zone. Soon, Izuku used all of his new quirks involuntarily, making Izuku almost fall unconscious. Quirkologist, I am so sorry, Katsuki apologized, carrying his ancient ally to the plaza. The entrance to the USJ practically exploded as All Might himself appeared at the top of the stairs. The man wasn't wearing his usual smile. In fact, he looked downright pissed. The blond man tore off his blue tie and tossed it aside. Have no fear, students, we are here, All Might declared as the rest of the pro-heroes from UA appeared alongside him. Tenya was seen, looking slightly worn out, just behind the teachers. He had fulfilled his role perfectly and brought reinforcements. Katsuki looked at Izuku. If it's all right with you, how adventurous are you feeling today, Quirkologist? Katsuki smirked. Katsuki and Izuku ran. Momo, Kyoka, and Denki were holding their own pretty well, but the villains were starting to overpower them. Kaminari, use your quirk, Kyoka exclaimed. I can cover my body with electricity, but if I try to shoot it out, it'll go everywhere. I'd take you guys down along with them, Denki shouted. Are you able to channel your electricity into that staff I made for you? Momo asked Denki. Maybe, Denki shrugged. Denki proceeded to do that, the staff being engulfed with electricity. Hey, it works, Denki exclaimed. Yaoyorozu, do you think I could keep this staff when this is over? Sure, Momo nodded. Kaminari, villains coming your way, Kyoka alerted the electrification user. Denki then started to hit the villains, each of them getting electrocuted. Though, when it seemed like the trio were winning, more villains had started to surround them. Uh-oh, this doesn't look good, Momo gulped. As soon as the trio became truly surrounded, the Wonder Duo arrived. Ake, Katsuki, and Izuku. Nice to see you turn up, Blasty and Mr. Quirky, Kyoka noticed. It's what a hero does, isn't it? Katsuki smirked. Quirkologist, now. Izuku charged at the villains, but also starting to become anxious, since he knew for a fact that these villains wanted him to join the League of Villains. So he decided to do what he does best, steal from others as a coping mechanism, though he wanted to mess with them a little bit, too. You know, as revenge. Bone plus ignite plus burning hands plus charge thunder plus fireworks. Izuku's bones became indestructible, as he ignited his hands with ignite and burning hands, the combination making Izuku's ignited hands blue. Then Izuku fired charge thunder, as well as several fire bullets. Though just charge thunder was enough to defeat the villains on its own, and Izuku had to concentrate, so he wouldn't accidentally hit his allies. Then Izuku remembered what he was actually there for. So while the villains were down, he used Evaluate on the villains to see what quirks he was interested in the most. It was one with all time. Muahaha. A list of the quirks Izuku stole then and there. Axe Hands, a mutant quirk that replaces the user's hands for axes. Blacksmith, an emitter quirk that allows the user to create weapons in a way similar to the quirk creation. Pufferfish, a transformation quirk that allows the user to become prickly and inflate parts of their body. Night Vision, a mutant quirk that allows the user to see in the dark. Drongo, an emitter quirk that allows the user to replicate the voice of anyone. Muscle Expansion, a transformation quirk that allows the user to expand their muscles, giving them a significant boost in strength. Assistant, a mutant quirk that gives the user's mind its own assistant, similar to Siri. Earthquake, an emitter quirk that allows the user to produce earthquakes from their feet. Slippery Slide, a transformation quirk that allows the user to change how dry or wet they are. And when the villains soon got up again, Izuku used all of his newest quirks, one by one, until there was one left standing. Quirk, Electric Charge. Emitter type. Looks like it allows him to manipulate electricity. Kind of like Kaminari, only that he can't make his own electricity, and has to rely on outside sources. It also looks like he's immune to electrical attacks, meaning that he was faking it when I initially shocked him. Izuku analyzed, using evaluate. Then the villain grabbed Denki, who was on the ground, covering himself from Izuku's attacks. "Join the league, Midoriya, or your friend here gets it," the villain shouted, before anyone could make another move. Bang! The villain was shot by pro hero Snipe, who arrived with several other pro heroes, like Ectoplasm. "Holy crap!" Izuku exclaimed. "Are you all right, Midoriya?" We see that a number was dealt on the villains. Ectoplasm asked Izuku. "Yeah, I'm fine. Kind of, maybe." Izuku trailed off. "But the others." "Others," Katsuki kept in mind. "Quirkologist. Should we see how Froggy, Ijiro, and Dual Quirk are doing? We kind of left them back at the plaza." "Oh yeah, it would be very rude of us if we didn't check on them after I kicked total ass." Izuku nodded, the two running out of the mountain zone, back to the plaza. Meanwhile, Aizawa was unconscious after fighting the villains. Tsu and Hitoshi were carrying him, and Ijiro was waiting for Katsuki and Izuku. All Might was fighting the freaky monster thing that the League of Villains had sent out. What the everlasting is this thing? All Might wondered, the thing not being affected by his attacks. "This here is a Namu, a monster composed of multiple quirks. As you can see, this here Namu is composed of 2 mutant types." Tamura monologued. "One of them is shock absorption, meaning that he can absorb the shock of any attack. The other is super regeneration, so you couldn't even kill him if you tried." All Might started to sweat. "Oh crap, he's right," All Might thought to himself. Then, out of nowhere, the protagonist of this story jumped into the scene. Muscle expansion plus bone plus iron defense plus crystallize plus hot wings plus heart bomb plus rock plates plus gunpoint plus attraction of small objects. Izuku knew that this was a dangerous combination, since the effect of using too many transformation quirks at once was breaking his limbs, but he didn't care. He didn't want his favorite hero to die to some freakish monster. Plus, he had Bone activated. What could go wrong? Izuku became very muscly, his arms becoming metallic, his hands becoming engulfed in crystals and rock plates, and Izuku's bones became indestructible and everything was enhanced by heart bomb, and Izuku had fiery wings on his back. And because of the amplification of attraction of small objects, the Namu was coming closer and closer to Izuku with each pull. "Bone crushing. Smash!" Izuku exclaimed, punching the Namu extremely hard, but the Namu just absorbed the attack. Izuku had to go with Plan B. What was Plan B, you may be wondering? Well, after using regeneration on himself, Izuku deactivated his quirks, almost going unconscious again, and activated Bug Bite. Izuku ran up to the Namu and activated another combination. Bone plus Bug Bite plus Jelly Surprise plus Heart Bomb. "Astonishing tackle," Izuku exclaimed, tackling the Namu. Izuku then trapped the Namu, using Jelly Surprise. Izuku then waited to see if the Namu would escape, and of course it didn't. Once sure, Izuku walked up to the Namu and bit it. Yes, you read it correctly if you aren't dyslexic. Bit it. Soon, the Namu was paralyzed and it couldn't move. "All Might, I couldn't just stand there and watch you die." Izuku smiled, about to pass out. "Young Midoriya, how can I thank you?" All Might asked, astonished. "You don't have to. I'm a hero." Izuku smiled, collapsing to the ground. Tamura was absolutely furious. "Kurogiri, we need to go. Now," Tamura commanded. "Yes, sir." The portal man became a portal again, as the two escaped. After all of the students had been cleared out of the USJ, there was some discussion amongst the class. "That was so nerve-wracking," Toru squealed. "I'm surprised that we made it out there alive," Tsu said, rather bluntly. "Did y'all see that epic punch that Midoriya did against the Namu?" Mina asked the others. "Oh yeah, he got some new quirks." Ijiro nodded. Bone-crushing smash was a pretty manly move, though why did he call it bone-crushing? It's not like he broke any of his bones. I think it's the side effects of whenever he uses too many of a quirk type at once. Katsuki spoke up. You're saying that like you've witnessed it before, Ochako mentioned. I have. Katsuki nodded. Whenever Quirkologist uses too many transformation quirks at once, he tends to break his bones. Hitoshi wasn't very happy. He was glad that everyone made it out with little to no injuries, but he was also kind of jealous. He wanted the spotlight. He had the most flashy quirk out of all of the class, so he should be the most talked about. Well, did you hear that Midoriya had a panic attack during the incident? Hitoshi spoke up. Shinso, panic attacks can be very scary. It's not nice to say something like that about someone who clearly has some sort of panic disorder. Momo scolded Hitoshi. Now that you mention it, Kiro, those villains said that they wanted to kidnap Midoriya. I wonder why, Tsu pondered. Katsuki knew he had to steer the conversation away from Izuku. Listen, you don't know what the Quirkologist could have gone through in the past, so it's best that you shouldn't speculate about him. If he wants to tell you all about his point of view, he will. But if he doesn't, then that's fine. Katsuki told everyone. All you should know is that the reason why Izuku doesn't like to be involved with villains is why he had so many quirks, even at the start of the year. The class all agreed that they were better off not talking about Izuku's experiences and rather spoke about their own experiences during the incident. Meanwhile, back at the League of Villains bar headquarters, Tomiro was having a drink with Kurogiri. Neither were pleased about the result of their invasion. It was a total failure. We should have brought in more reinforcements, and maybe a couple more Namu, Kurogiri complained. Yeah, that could have worked. Relax, Kurogiri. We might not have accomplished either of our goals, but we know that Izuku will be a great asset to us when he joins the League. Tomiro laughed, clearly a little bit drunk. I'm pretty sure the next free opportunity, too. To kidnap that quirky dude will be the US Sports Festival. Shigaraki, I believe you might have drunken a little bit. Too much? The Sports Festival is definitely a risky move. So many pro heroes will be there. Kurogiri informed the drunk villain. And we should also wait for more Namu to be made. Who cares? Numbers are just. Numbers. Ha ha, Tomiro laughed, sculling down another drink. We'll talk about this later, when you're less drunk. Kurogiri sighed. Whatever. I'll ask the rest of the League what they think of this plan, Tomiro smiled. Shigaraki, you should probably go to bed now. Kurogiri suggested. No, Dad, I don't wanna. Tomiro soon chugged another drink down. Shigaraki, I don't think I'm your dad. At least I hope I'm not your dad. Kurogiri pondered. So, since I'm hopefully not your dad, how's about another drink? That sounds like alcohol. Tomiro giggled. Let's do it. Cheers. To an unsuccessful invasion. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through What If Deku Had Ability to Steal Quirks. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to NightWolfGamer03 for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on fanfiction.net for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2.0 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you guys in the next video.